Good afternoon, and welcome to the Cop Shop with FPD. I'm your host, Chief Steve Hebbe, and with me as always is our Public Information Officer, Shanice Gonzales. How are you, Shanice?
I'm good, Chief. I'm cold. Winter's here.
Winter is here, no doubt about it, and I think it's going to get colder before it gets warmer.
I know, unfortunately.
Yes. Shanice has considered taking a job up in Anchorage, Alaska, where I came from, but I think she's thinking better of it as the winter season hits.
Maybe in the summer.
Maybe in the summer. For a
Vacation
couple
home
months.
up there.
There you go.
That'd
there
be okay.
You go. So we've had a busy couple of weeks since we last saw you, and we're entering a busy time here as we're nearing the holidays. So we are pre-recording today, getting you ready for Black Friday and Thanksgiving, and then rolling right on into Christmas and New Year's. And this time of year always goes fast for me.
It does.
In fact, it's actually surprising. It's the end of November already.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know where 2023 has gone. At times it's been a slow, rough year, but then you wake up and holy cow, the year has flown by. So as we enter the holidays, I know it'll be a busy time for everyone. So we're glad to be spending some time with you today and talking about some of the things we have upcoming and some of the things that happened recently. Most recent for us was last weekend. We had our first real cougar in Farmington that I'm aware of.
Yeah, me too.
Are you a mountain lion girl?
I think they are beautiful. I love big cats. They're just beautiful. But that was a big one in a tree in the middle of town.
In the middle of town. How she got there, or he got there, I'm not even sure it was a male or a female.
Yeah, I have no idea.
I'm not sure I can tell with cougars, but was big and was up in a tree. We had the police get dispatched over because people were worried. We saw that the cat was treed and called Fish and Game. They came. Farmington Fire had to lift him up in a bucket truck up into the tree, and you see a picture of him right now on Scott's site. Honestly, just beautiful cat, but sitting way up in the tree. They were able to get a bucket truck up there, and then they tranquilized the cat, which still managed to stay in the tree. That I would have thought would have been a danger, that you could tranquilize a cat and it would drop out of there, but it didn't. And then they were able to retrieve the animal out of the tree and cage it, of course, quickly, and then move it someplace safer out of Farmington. So we've had more wildlife lately. Bear occasionally, moose or two, and so I don't know if Colorado's evicting them across the border into our state or what's going on, but I'd prefer probably not to walk out of my house and see a big cat staring at me.
Up at the tree, yeah, absolutely.
And I like cats, I do, but they can be friskier than I think I'd want to see.
The bigger they get.
Yeah, this one was definitely beautiful, and you can see the Farmington Fire going up in their bucket truck to take care of it. Really, very good picture. Great animal, but a big deal in center of town, 20th and Smith Lane, I think, in that vicinity. Lots of folks riled up about that one. So that was a big thing for us, and we have upcoming the Christmas parade. Which will be next week, is always a good event. Do you go to that much? Have you been to the Christmas parade?
I have, yeah, every year.
Last year you were with me, weren't you? I think so.
So once I started with the department, then I was able to be engaged with you guys, taking pictures and
good
advertising all of that. But
so we'll be there, and that is I want to say
the 30th.
The 30th, the 30th of November in the evening. I'll be there, and I think you'll see a pretty good police presence, and you can also see Shanice, who's getting to be more and more of a star. You can see Shanice there too. Otherwise, what other things do we have going on?
We had coffee with a cop at Lowe's last Thursday. That was awesome. That was Lowe's initiative. They invited us, just wanted us to interact with their customers and their employees. And those events are always great, collaboration with the community. It allows people to come in and talk to officers, meet the officers who are serving them locally, ask questions, voice concerns. So that one actually was a big one, and I don't know if it's because the size of the store and just the customers coming in and out. But they also had donuts, so they were offering donuts to everybody who was walking in, who then was engaging with the officers. So that was a great event. Good.
Well, very good, and we thank Lowe's for reaching out to us. We're always looking for partners, and those are good events, and it's our sworn, but it's also all sorts of our civilian staff too, from our park rangers to our code enforcement folks, and sometimes we have our animal control folks there. We have all kinds of different jobs, and so if you've ever been interested in FPD, but don't want to be a police officer, like I said, there's a variety of other jobs, and these are opportunities to come out and meet folks and quiz them a little bit about their job. Code enforcement's a smaller unit, but animal control, we have a number of positions, and we've had some difficulty filling them. So if you like animals, great job, and you get a chance to work with the FPD still. So thank you to Lowe's for having that. Last week we also had a training event up here that we hosted. Farmington Police did, and it was the New and Future Chiefs training. It's a week-long course, and it was involving chiefs and command level staff generally from around the state. And it's the second time we've hosted. It's the 5th session that we've had. And so we thought we'd talk a little bit about that, and that leadership in policing is something we've talked about a bunch here. It's certainly one of my biggest concerns for the future of policing, and for the future of policing in New Mexico is how are we going to continue to attract good people that want to be in the top spots, and how are we then going to support them when they're trying to bring needed reforms and movement to the profession. So this is something we've been doing now really since 2020. 2021 we actually had our first class scheduled in the spring of 2020, and within like 2 or 3 weeks of the class being held, the shutdown order came, and so we did not proceed with that class at that time. And so really this has only been something we've been doing for the last 2.5 to 3 years, but it's gone pretty quickly. So,
and I think it's been pretty successful. I've seen a couple of them. More people are coming, people from different departments.
Yes. It was one of the first things. Shanice was in the hiring process, and we had Shanice come and watch some segment of the training that I was doing.
The PIO.
So she had some idea of what we were doing and what her job would entail. So that was her first chance. That was last year when we hosted it. So Shanice has got some questions, and we'll discuss with you. But as always, if you have questions about the things you're hearing on our show, feel free to message Shanice and or even Scott, and we can definitely address your questions in future, or just personally, one-to-one. So feel free to reach out to FPD or the radio station here.
Yeah, absolutely.
Go ahead.
Chief, can you share the inspiration behind starting the Future Chiefs Training Association, and what goals and hopes you achieve with this initiative?
So, so often, I think when you look at people, we're generally creatures of our own experience, and what it takes to be a chief was just not something that we talked about much when I was in Anchorage. Did not know really what to expect when I came down here, and then Anchorage was significantly different from Farmington, just as far as size and complexity of the organization. So really, I walked in, I did not know what to expect, and then there was really no trainings here. It was sort of OJT. There was nothing in New Mexico that would train chiefs on even some of the local laws and some of the particulars about New Mexico. So after I'd been a chief for a number of years, I became president of the Chiefs Association throughout the state, and that kind of took me, and gave me a platform where I could maybe do some things that I thought needed to happen across the state. And I then also started to mix with more chiefs. So most of the chiefs that I'd come in with in 2014 when I got hired were gone by 2017, 2018. So it was a whole new group of chiefs that I was seeing at the Chiefs Association and mixing with. And it was a lot of the same questions and problems they were having that I had experienced when I came in. So I knew from other states that they do some sort of executive level training for chiefs. Now, we're not really just big enough as a state, somebody like Cali or Illinois is, where you could have just a chief's training. Mine kind of morphed. I wanted also to include command level folks that we could inspire to become chiefs down the road, that we could kind of give them the map. So not just the new chiefs, and here's how you be a chief, but also the command level folks, and here's why you would want to consider being a chief, and here's some of the things you need to do to get prepared for that before it happens. So I had really a couple of different goals, but mostly it was to try and fill a hole that we really saw statewide. A challenge was getting qualified leaders into especially some of the smaller departments. So I worked with Chief Steele out of Rio Rancho, who had been a chief in Oklahoma, and he'd originally been a cop in Florida. Both those states had future chiefs training or executive level trainings. So he was able to give me the guides with here's the classes that they had, and then we started going because we're not a rich organization. We started going throughout the state, and we grabbed chiefs who could do some of these trainings. So I talk about leading organizational change. Stuart talks about leadership. We had others talk about internal affairs. It had originally been Nicole and I, but eventually now it's Shanice and I that are talking about, and you can see our picture on Facebook, and we're talking about public information officers and social media and interacting with your community. We've also got a budgeting section, and so a variety of different topics, and we are teaching that organically from within the state. And so, another goal that has then been achieved is we're getting a lot more interaction between agencies. So this year, for this class, we had someone from Las Cruces, someone from Lordsburg, a couple from Deming, somebody from Santa Fe, as well as Farmington folks and Bloomfield folks, and so really from around the state there was a variety of different departments represented, and all of that leads to some interaction, some networking between those agencies, and seeing how they're doing things and seeing how we're doing things, and then kind of talking through how can we do things better. So really I've been very pleased with the training. This was our 5th session overall. And I'm real proud of all the folks that are contributing to it, and I think it's going well.
In a state as diverse as New Mexico, what unique challenges do command level officers face, and how does the Future Chiefs training address these challenges?
It's different than some other states, I think. There's such a gap between maybe the 5 or 6 bigger agencies, the Hobbs, the Farmingtons, obviously Albuquerque, Cruces, Santa Fe, and then so many of the smaller agencies. So we had Chiefs panel the last day, and we involved a chief from Hatch, which is a small town, had 9 officers. Have some real challenges. They're closer to the border, so some real challenges with immigration. As well as budget and getting funding to do things that they need to do. So the diversity is so wide. There isn't 25 agencies about the same height or about the same size. There's 5 or 6 at the top end, and then a lot of really small agencies whose numbers are wildly different. So it's difficult for them to compare what's going on in Albuquerque when you're in Hatch and you have 9. So trying to bring their experience to lieutenants and captains from around the state, so they can hear what the challenges are in more rural settings. But another challenge for them is just getting qualified people to come in and be chiefs, unless it comes from within their agency. You're not going to get generally lieutenants from Farmington putting in to be chief in some of the smaller jurisdictions. The pay is much less to be a chief there than we're paying for lieutenants up here. And same is going to be true for Albuquerque, Santa Fe, Cruces. So that, because of our retire and rehire laws, you almost phase out all of those mid-level managers that could go to be smaller town chiefs and stay in New Mexico. That is something I would like to see changed. I would like to see us encouraging our own ingrown staff from around the state that we've spent so much money as a state training them and getting them into the New Mexico culture. I would like to see them then have a chance to move up and stay as chiefs here in New Mexico. But that with the retire and rehire law, first of all, most chiefs aren't chiefs before they can retire for all sorts of obvious reasons. One of them being you're generally someone who can be fired at will. So people are going to make sure they've got their retirement before they get themselves into a position like that. And then secondly, when they can retire, now you can draw your pension. You can go into Colorado, Utah, Texas, Arizona, and you can be a chief. So we're exporting talent and training out of the state at the executive level, which means then for some of those smaller towns, they've got to bring folks in from outside. And even Farmington, in the case of me, had to go outside the state in order to bring somebody in. You weren't getting captains and deputy chiefs out of Albuquerque putting in for it. So, there are challenges here for us in New Mexico, and the training does the best that it can to prepare people for the discussion of being an executive, whether it's here in the state or it's later on outside of the state. Still, the profession needs good leaders. But it's incumbent on us in law enforcement leadership to be sharing our knowledge and our experience with some of the smaller jurisdictions that don't have those same opportunities.
And I think it's great when you do get those success stories. So like the chief down at the Navajo Nation was a DC for us, so he was able to stay in New Mexico. And then I think the chief from Bloomfield came from the Navajo Nation. So you get a couple of those success stories that are able to stay.
Yes. And, uniquely was Dave Karst was a lieutenant with us, and he went over to be chief in Bloomfield for 3 years before Francisco came in. So we are getting some of those, and Karst had attended this training, and we encourage people to stay in state when they can, and that one just worked out well for Dave to move over there and stay in San Juan County.
How does, and I know you kind of touched up on this, if there's just anything that you want to add, how does the Future Chiefs training foster collaboration and networking amongst officers from different departments across the state?
Networking is usually a pretty big part of any trainings, no matter what profession you're in. If Scott goes off to a training and running a radio station, then there's some networking with others that are running radio stations for colleges, and that's the same thing for us. So you don't get a chance too often from Farmington to mix with command level folks from Deming, command level folks from Las Cruces, who are going through their challenges. But really, it's the same state, and their challenges will eventually be our challenges, or vice versa. So, the chance just to get together. So there's one thing about the classroom instruction, but there's another thing about the networking that goes on for all the different command level officers, and it helps us see the state bigger. You can be so myopic in this world. I'm sure citizens here in San Juan County and Farmington feel it sometimes that they've done their whole life here in Farmington. They really don't know anything about the rest of the state, much less parts of the state that are 6-7 hours away. We don't want that in policing. We need to know what is the trend, what is going on in other parts of the state before it hits us here, and we want to share that experience that we're having up here with other jurisdictions. So, I like the networking component of it.
What are some key leadership qualities that you believe are essential as a chief of police, and how are these emphasized in the training program?
That's a big question. I think, and so one of the classes that I've been teaching through every one of them is leading organizational change, and to me that's just foundational for what we're supposed to be doing as chiefs. But yet it's been something that really has been lacking, I think, in policing. Certainly was in my career. You can hit the top level in policing. Like I retired from Anchorage and come down here, and there can be all sorts of disincentives to trying to lead change, whether that changes on internal affairs, that changes on use of force, all things that today, right, that's what the general expectation is. But you can come in as a chief and you'll meet resistance from sometimes your community, sometimes your political leadership, sometimes your staff, sometimes all three, to actually bring change. And you're already retired. That means you're later in your career. So the ability to then just coast for a few years and then move on is there. And that is something I absolutely think just kills the profession when we do that, when we spend 2 or 3 years and we don't really bring any changes to the organization, and then we just move on. And given the average life expectancy of a chief in some of the bigger cities, 3 to 5 years, 5 to 7 years closer for cities our size. But if you go 3 to 5 years and you're not making significant changes, you are so far behind. And you do that a couple of times, and all of a sudden you are on the verge of a disaster. So the ability and willingness to lead change, even in the face of resistance, to me is a significant foundational thing that we need out of law enforcement leadership. But there's other things too. I think you can be a leader not just within your department, but within the community. And we've had a number of things happen where if the chief is not kind of front and center and leading the community forward on something, you will have problems. So one of the issues that we got into when I first was a chief was immigration, the LGBTQ community. And you are going to want your police department, no matter where politically you fall, you're going to want your police department to be the police department for everyone. But it can be easy to fall into pressure these days, and everybody is so divided in our country and needs you to be on their side, whatever that side that is. And honestly, that is not the role of the police. So a law enforcement leader has to be able to walk that line of, I represent the entire community. That doesn't mean I side just with the majority or with the minority. I am here, I am everybody's chief, and you can bring some of that leadership, some of that leading your community, that even though they don't necessarily like the topic, the reality is we have illegal immigrants in our community. Folks that are going to have contact with the police and who I believe, are going to see crimes and have crimes happen to them, and I want them to feel comfortable enough to call us that they're going to report if they get beat up, if they get robbed, if they get sexually assaulted. Those are things that we want. So as a chief, you've got to be able to lead the community, listening to what the community is saying, but still leading them down a path that maybe they don't think of. It is easy to jump on the national mantra, whatever that national mantra is, and start to exclude other groups. And you can't do that as the police. The police have to be seen as everyone's department. So that is a second one. And then you have to be able to communicate. You have to be able to communicate with your political leadership and your bosses, obviously. You have to be able to communicate with the troops. They have to know you and trust you if they're going to follow you. And then you have to be able to communicate with the public. They have to see you. They have to believe that you're part of the community. So these are some of the things that we're talking about as chiefs. And of course, there are a lot of things. You have to be knowledgeable, obviously, about the profession and studying what's coming, nationally. But just foundationally, you have to be willing to take some risks and lead change. You have to lead your community, and you have to be able to communicate to do those.
Absolutely. As the founder, what have been some of the most rewarding aspects of seeing the future chiefs train and grow and make a difference in law enforcement leadership?
Just seeing some of the people that have attended the trainings then move on to become chiefs within their organization, and still have that connection where now I actually get chiefs from other areas that reach out to me because they've talked with me, they've seen me at the trainings. They certainly saw some of the stuff we went through this spring. It was the state was watching us and how we handled some of those events. But the chance to see people that were at the lieutenant level or were just brand new chiefs, and now it's a couple of years down the road and they're either chiefs or they're weathering their own storms and they're reaching out and networking a little bit to get some assistance. That to me, we've improved the profession here in New Mexico. I want to continue doing that, so that every New Mexican has real faith in their law enforcement, and that their law enforcement leadership is cutting edge, and that we are looking to get better. That it doesn't take some mandates from somebody in Santa Fe or D.C. It's us that knows what's going on in our departments and our communities, and we're taking steps to address those things. So,
do we have time for one more question?
We are nearing the end, so we'll kind of leave it there, but we'll actually revisit this because we'll continue to talk as we enter the legislative session. These are topics that we'll get into is what does law enforcement leadership look like in New Mexico, and how are we going to keep getting people to come do the job? So it isn't just at the line level, it's also at leaders. Who wants to do a job if everybody hates them and you have no career longevity? That's not the best place. That certainly doesn't encourage people to put in for the job. Some of this training was to give people the window into, look, you actually can get in, you actually can make a difference, and you actually should be looking to do that. So we will talk about this topic in the future. I'm passionate about it. But until then, we're just coming off Thanksgiving. Since we're pre-recording, it will come to you right after Thanksgiving. We hope you had a great Thanksgiving. We hope to see you next week at the Christmas parade, and we'll see you out on the streets for Black Friday as we all try and get our last sales made. So
You won't see me.
won't see Shanice. If you see me, I might be in uniform. So with that, we'll sign off, and we'll see you in a couple of weeks. It'll be December already next time we see you. So thanks for being here on the Cop Shop with FPD.
Thanks.